Okay, welcome to project number 16. For project number 16, we're going to be dealing with a new appliance this time around, and it's kind of in addition to our three-way switches. But the newest appliance that we're going to be working with is going to be a four-way switch. Now, granted, let me first mention this. This is by no means something that's a setup that's legal, but this is entirely for simulation purposes, and I do not have a 2x4 that has 4 boxes. So we're gonna, and this is strictly just for educational purposes, and so that way you can be able to be seeing exactly what's done when you're dealing with a four-way switch in this case. So kind of imagine that this four-way switch is in its own independent box, and this again is entirely for simulation purposes. So we're going to be just kind of playing along with imagining that this is going to be a fourth box. But first off, let me introduce you to this new appliance. This is our four-way switch. Similar to our three-way switch in that we have a common and 2 travelers, but what we have now are 2 commons along with our 2 travelers. The commons serve a similar purpose that our three-way switches did, is that our commons are going to be strictly that entry of power into the switch. Okay? So just like in this scenario here that I have already put together, is that you have the power that's going into the three-way switch. The power will then travel to box number 2 for our four-way switch. It's entering into our four-way switch. The power will travel between the four-way switch and the second three-way switch before it is then transferred over to our lamp holder. Okay. Now, where do we see a scenario like this? Perhaps you have a living room where you're connecting to a kitchen, a hallway, maybe even a bedroom, master bedroom that goes along with along the side of this living room. And so you have several different areas, 3 different areas that you enter into this living room. That's where we can see a purpose for this four-way switch, because we're connecting power between 1, 2, 3 lights that go along with those 3 different entries into that living room. Bedroom, hallway, kitchen, you name it. This is going to allow you to be able to turn on a light from those 3 different entries without having to go into a room, walk all the way across the room just to turn on a light. This is adding more convenience for the homeowner when it comes to their electricity needs or lighting needs for that living room. So again, strictly for simulation purposes, to allow you to see exactly how this wiring is all done when it comes to our four-way switch. But again, can be rather intimidating when we see the additional terminals and additional common for the four-way switch as opposed to our three-way switches. But once you see this all done, once you get introduced to this wiring of the four-way switch, it's so easy. So let's see how this is done. Kind of speed things along. I did a couple of the neutrals ahead of time just to kind of speed up this process. But let's get right into it. Start with the basics. Let's start with the first three-way switch. We're going to go right ahead, just have our power enter our first common. We'll then connect our travelers. We'll use both hot wires, our red and our black. Okay, so here's our wiring, same as we normally would be for a three-way switch. Power going into our common. It's then hooked up to our two gold terminals, our travelers, which will then travel over to our four-way switch. So here we have our two wires, red and the black. We're gonna be, remember, we're hooking up to our two commons, the two black wires. You know, also a little cheat sheet here. This is how it is for our four-way switches. Some of them will have this, I would imagine, but they're labeled input on this switch here. But all in all, those commons are used for an entry. This is where we're going to have our travelers hook up, is to our commons on our four-way switch. Black wire is hooked up to our second common. Okay, now this is where the simulation purpose comes in. This is strictly for this practice alone and how it works. But we have our two travelers here. I'm just going to take, for this simulation, just a couple of red wires. This is how it would normally be. You would have your two hot wires. Both these travelers hook up to your two travelers for your three-way switch. For the simulation, I just have a little tiny, couple of tiny red wires. These will hook up to our travelers on our four-way switch, which will then be connected to our travelers on our three-way switch. Okay. Okay, so travelers with travelers, gold terminal with the gold terminal. Okay, and then from there, we're just hooking up the power that is leaving this exchange between the four-way switch and the three-way switch. All it is just the power leaving this three-way switch right here, its last common, and then going over to box, our last box, which would be our lamp holder. So this black wire is going to run over to our last box. Now all I have left are just my neutrals. So at this point I'm just hooking up my neutral on my light, and then I'm just going to relay those neutrals all the way back over to my power in. So neutrals are just coming back, just standard, just relay it back all the way over to your power in. And from this point here, it's just hooking up the grounds. Okay, and so, you know, granted, this is just a simulation, but yeah, I'll just tie in those grounds between the four-way switch and the three-way switch in that same box. But yeah, I mean, the grounding is just the same as it would be with the three-way switch on a four-way switch, nothing special. Just make sure that you have all of your appliances, your wires, your cables, all grounded to your box. Which this would be tied into the ground on this last three-way switch here. And there we have it. Business perspective here. Three-way switch controlling along with the four-way switch, and another three-way switch controlling this lamp here. Wiring is extremely easy. Just making sure that you're just hooking up between your travelers and travelers. Your common that's on your four-way switch is hooked up to the travelers that are on the first three-way switch that has the power coming in. But a relatively easy project, is kind of intimidating with the extra terminals on a four-way switch. But that concludes project number 16.